I'm reading out now the last portion of Thomas Cookson's review from the DWRG for Snakedance. It was published on the 21st of the 12th, It's titled Diamond in the Rough. I'm just reading out the last 5 paragraphs. I can give 2 arguments of what went wrong from here. One is that a story like Snakedance, much like Enlightenment, reflected a very spiritual direction for Doctor Who, stories in which the individual and the soul really matter. But then the program did a complete about-turn, in a way that was a major betrayal in my eyes. In catering to the fans, it brought along a lot of nostalgic monster parades of old favourites like the Cybermen, Sea Devils and Sontarans. The show turned, or rather regressed, from the spiritual to the superficial. And as it became superficial, it became cold-blooded. The sanctity of life was out, and in came characters who were brought in simply to die en masse, to be cannon fodder to those old monsters, in an often contrived and nasty fashion. Another angle, I suppose, is that Snakedance reflects the show's direction into the introspective. A lot of long-running shows do this when they're getting quite long in the tooth. They either become seriously introspective, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or go to the other extreme of self-parody and dismantling the fourth wall, moonlighting. Doctor Who, of course, had done both, and the introspection was a killjoy backlash against the frivolity of the later Tom Baker stories. Snakedance used that introspective approach and did it very well, but all too often introspective Doctor Who didn't work on TV. It worked very well in the novels and audios, but in TV it tended to be quite disastrous for the show. The show became insular, pretentious and depressing, and it reduced the Doctor to a moral cripple who couldn't do anything without having a crisis of conscience about it. But the worst thing is that it made the show prone to force introspection through some quite exploitative content. Contrived nasty violence became a means to provoke shock emotional reactions and remorses from the characters in mean-spirited, manipulative stories like Warriors of the Deep, Resurrection of the Daleks, Twin Dilemma and The Two Doctors. And it's become a trend in Torchwood, particularly in Cyberwoman and Countryside. To me, that insularness really hurt the program's ethos. Doctor Who had once been a real counterculture era TV show about questioning authority and expanding your horizons and making a difference. It had very topical stories about global concerns, like the Green Death and genesis of the Daleks. But come the 80s, the show becomes only concerned with itself, with continuity issues, superficial monster parades, and the Doctor's self-involved angst. It was no longer a series about making a difference, it was telling its viewers to stay tuned rather than to get out there. It became too much about appeasing the petulant, demanding voice of fandom and the authenticity of the fictional canon, whereas in the past that wasn't important. It was clearly fiction where you could see the joins and stagecraft, but it was also daring and thought-provoking and something you could apply to real-world concerns. Not anymore. In the 80s, the show had become lost in itself, and so had its fan base. As Doctor Who has now come back, it's now concerned with being popular and appealing to an insular modern culture. The Doctor and Rose relationship created the same kind of young fan craze as a demographically aimed boy band, and likewise those fans seem to think that reuniting the Doctor and Rose would make everything right with the world again. Call me old-fashioned, but in the 70s golden age, the show was actually about teaching the viewer to come to terms with the fact that there's a lot that's not right with the world. I'd say then that Snakedance was one of the last times that Doctor Who was actually about looking outside rather than fixating on the fictional canon of the show. It was about, in the Buddhist sense, facing your fears and rising to challenges, and it was about looking at different cultures from beyond our own arrogant, mocking, knowing culture. All things considered, Snakedance is an absolute triumph of its erratic and often ugly era, and that wins me over in one viewing. It is well worth owning.